Hello, hello, learners! Welcome back to the Side by Side English, your cozy, friendly place to learn real English through real conversations.
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad you're here today because today's topic, this one is personal.
Very personal, like uncomfortably personal for a lot of people.
Yes, because today we're talking about something that almost every English learner has experienced at some point.
You understand English, you really do. You watch the show, you follow the conversation, you read the sentence, and it makes complete sense.
And then someone looks at you and says, "So, what do you think?"
And suddenly, nothing. Blank. Complete silence inside your own head.
Like someone turned off the lights.
Exactly. And the panic starts. And then you think, why can I understand everything but say almost nothing?
Which is such a frustrating feeling because it almost feels unfair. Like I did the work, I studied, I listened. Where are the words?
Right. And a lot of learners start to believe that this gap means something is wrong with them, that maybe they are just not a natural speaker, that maybe English is simply not for them.
But that is not true. And today, that is exactly what we want to talk about. Why this gap exists, what is actually happening in your brain, and what you can do about it.
And because this is the side-by-side English, we will be doing all of this through English you can actually use in real life. This is a B2 level episode, so the language will feel a little richer, but still natural, clear, and very comfortable to follow.
Yes, so please don't worry if you don't catch every word. Just stay with us, listen for the feeling, and let the language come to you naturally.
And at the end of today's episode, we have a vocabulary section where we look at some of the most useful words and phrases from today's conversation. So stay with us for that too.
And before we begin, if you enjoy learning English through honest, real conversations like this, please like the episode, subscribe to the channel, and join the English Leap family. It means the world to us.
All right, let's get into it. So, let's start with the moment itself. That moment when someone asks you something in English and your mind just freezes.
Oh, yes, to freeze up, that horrible, familiar feeling.
When you freeze up, you suddenly become unable to act or speak, even when you want to, like your brain just stops cooperating.
And the embarrassing part is 2 seconds before that moment, you were completely fine. You understood everything. You were following the conversation.
And then it was your turn and nothing came out.
Yes, and a lot of people think this means their English is bad, but actually, it often means something very different.
It means your English is mostly passive, and passive knowledge is English that lives in your head, that you recognize and understand, but that you haven't yet learned to produce.
Yes, there is a real difference between passive knowledge and active knowledge. Passive is what you receive. Active is what you create.
Think of it like this. Imagine you have watched hundreds of cooking videos. You know exactly what the chef is doing. You understand the steps. You recognize every ingredient.
But the moment you stand in the kitchen alone, it is suddenly not so easy.
Exactly. Watching is passive, cooking is active, and both are important, but they are not the same skill.
And this is what happens with English too. Listening and reading build your passive knowledge, and that is genuinely valuable. Do not underestimate it.
No, never underestimate it. Your passive knowledge is the foundation. It is why you understand. It is why things sound familiar. It is where all your speaking will eventually come from.
But speaking also needs practice of its own. It needs a different kind of effort.
Yes, because when you speak, you have to do many things at the same time. You have to think of the idea, find the words, arrange them correctly, say them at a normal speed, and also listen and respond to the other person.
Which is honestly a lot. When you say it like that, it's actually impressive that anyone speaks any language at all.
It really is. Human brains are doing so much work in every conversation.
And I think this is why learners need to be much kinder to themselves, because the gap between understanding and speaking is completely normal. It is part of the process.
It is not a flaw. It is a stage.
Yes, and the good news is that stage can change. But to understand how, we first need to talk about something called activation.
Yes, activation. Because passive knowledge does not automatically become active. It needs to be activated. And to activate something means to switch it on, to make it ready to use.
So how does that happen? How do you take words you know in your head and move them into your mouth?
Well, one of the most honest answers is you have to use them. Even badly, even awkwardly, even slowly.
Which is uncomfortable because most learners want to speak correctly before they speak publicly.
Right. They want to feel ready first.
But the problem is, readiness often comes from doing the thing, not from waiting until you feel prepared.
Yes, you cannot think your way into speaking. You have to speak your way into speaking.
That is such a strange sentence and yet completely true.
It really is. And think about babies. No baby waits until their grammar is perfect. They just start speaking. They say things wrong, they repeat, they get corrected gently, they try again, and slowly they become fluent.
And fluency, by the way, does not mean perfection. Fluency means the ability to communicate smoothly and naturally, even if small mistakes are still there.
Yes, a fluent speaker is not a speaker with zero errors. A fluent speaker is a speaker who keeps going even when they are not sure.
That is such an important thing to understand because so many learners stop themselves before they even start because they're afraid of making a mistake.
And that fear is understandable. Nobody wants to feel embarrassed. Nobody wants to sound silly in front of other people.
But here's the thing. Almost every person who speaks English well has a long history of sounding silly in English.
Absolutely. The embarrassing moments are not the enemy of fluency. They are often part of the path to it.
Yes, and this connects to something else that a lot of learners don't think about enough, the role of exposure.
Oh yes, to expose yourself to something means to spend a lot of time with it, to surround yourself with it regularly. And exposure to English is one of the most powerful things you can do.
Not just studying, not just reviewing grammar rules, but actually living inside the language as much as possible.
Yes, listening to English conversations while you cook, watching a show without subtitles, thinking in English for 5 minutes before bed.
Even talking to yourself, which sounds strange but is genuinely helpful.
Very helpful, because when you talk to yourself in English, you're activating your vocabulary in a safe, low-pressure environment.
No one's judging you, no one's watching. You can hesitate as much as you want.
And to hesitate means to pause before doing or saying something, usually because you're unsure or need a moment to think. And hesitating is not failure. It is your brain working.
Yes, even fluent speakers hesitate. Listen carefully to native speakers. They say and pause mid-sentence all the time.
Because thinking takes time, and thinking in a second language takes a little more time. That is completely okay.
So please stop punishing yourself for the pause. The pause is not silence. The pause is your brain doing its job.
Beautifully said. And there's one more thing we want to talk about before we get to vocabulary, and that is the idea of picking up on things.
Yes, to pick up on something means to notice it or absorb it naturally, often without even trying very hard.
And this is what happens when you expose yourself to lots of English. Over time, you start to pick up on patterns, on rhythms, on how sentences are built, on how native speakers connect their words.
And those things slowly move from your passive knowledge into your active knowledge without you even realizing it.
Yes, one day you just say a phrase correctly and think, where did that come from?
It came from all the English you quietly absorbed over weeks and months. It was always in there. It just needed time and use to come out.
Which brings us back to patience and kindness and staying in the process even when it feels slow.
Because the gap between understanding and speaking is not a wall. It is a bridge, and you are already on it.
You really are, even if you can't see the other side yet.
Okay, and now let's do what we love. Let's look at some of the key words and phrases from today's episode.
Yes, because some of these are so useful in everyday English. Let's go through them together.
First, freeze up. If you freeze up, you suddenly become unable to move, speak, or act, usually because of fear, nervousness, or pressure. For example, I froze up completely when my teacher asked me a question in English.
Or he froze up during the job interview even though he had prepared for weeks. Repeat. Freeze up.
Freeze up. Next, passive knowledge. Passive knowledge is the information or language that you understand but cannot yet produce or use on your own. For example, after years of listening, she had a lot of passive knowledge but needed more practice to activate it.
Or reading a lot builds passive knowledge that eventually supports your speaking and writing. Repeat, passive knowledge.
Passive knowledge. Next, a very important verb, activate. To activate something means to make it ready to use, to switch it from an inactive state to an active one. For example, the best way to activate your vocabulary is to start using it, even imperfectly.
Or regular conversation practice helps activate the grammar rules you've been studying. Repeat, activate.
Activate. Next, fluency. Fluency is the ability to speak or write smoothly and naturally in a language without needing to stop and struggle too much. For example, fluency doesn't mean perfection, it means communicating with confidence and flow.
Or she reached a level of fluency in English after 2 years of